The CEO leaned over to the single dad next to her on the plane and whispered 4 words that changed everything. "They're here for me." 15 seconds later, guns were drawn, passengers screamed, and the quiet father of one did something that left everyone speechless. He wasn't just a dad taking his daughter on vacation. He was someone the government thought died 7 years ago. Someone they called Shadow Wolf. Olivia Sterling had built her reputation on control. At 34, she was the youngest CEO in Sterling Group's century-long history. A woman who commanded boardrooms with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a general. Her blonde hair fell in calculated waves past her shoulders, and her cream-colored dress with its modest V-neck spoke of understated power. She had attended countless international conferences, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and never once let fear show in her crystalline blue eyes. Until today, this flight from Paris to New York was supposed to be routine. Another merger, another victory, another step in her relentless climb. She had chosen business class deliberately, avoiding the ostentation of first class while maintaining the distance from economy that her position demanded. The champagne was French. The seat was Italian leather. And everything was exactly as it should be, except for the persistent feeling that had followed her since boarding. The sense that invisible eyes tracked her every movement. Beside her sat Michael Harris, and if Olivia represented polished corporate perfection, Michael was its antithesis. 36 years old, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that suggested stories better left untold, he wore a simple olive jacket over a gray t-shirt. His hands were calloused, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his eyes held a weariness that went deeper than physical exhaustion. To anyone watching, he was just another tired father traveling with his child, perhaps divorced, perhaps widowed, certainly unremarkable. But Michael Harris had learned long ago that being unremarkable was the greatest disguise of all. His broad shoulders carried more than the weight of single parenthood. They bore the invisible burden of a past that refused to stay buried. Every scar hidden beneath his casual clothes told a story of service, sacrifice, and eventually, a betrayal that had driven him from the shadows of government work into the harsh light of civilian life. Between them sat Lily Harris, 7 years old, and blissfully unaware of the tension coiling through the cabin like an invisible snake. She had her father's dark hair, but none of his guardedness, her bright eyes taking in everything with the wonder that only children possess. To Lily, this flight was an adventure. The airplane, a magic carpet, carrying them across the ocean. She had already shown Olivia 3 drawings from her coloring book and asked twice if the CEO's sparkly earrings were real diamonds. "Daddy, look at the clouds," Lily said, pressing her small nose against the window. "They look like cotton candy." Michael's hand moved to his daughter's shoulder. A gesture that seemed protective but was actually tactical, positioning himself between her and the aisle. His eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every passenger, every exit, every potential threat. It was a habit that 7 years of civilian life hadn't broken, a reflex as automatic as breathing. 3 rows ahead, Damian Cross sat with the stillness of a waiting predator. At 40, he had the kind of sharp, angular features that photographers loved and enemies feared. His blonde hair was slicked back with expensive pomade. His charcoal suit cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and his pale gray eyes held all the warmth of winter steel. To the casual observer, he was just another businessman, perhaps a hedge fund manager or corporate lawyer. The truth was far more dangerous. Cross had built his empire on the destruction of others, a corporate raider who didn't just hostile takeover companies but destroyed the lives behind them. Olivia Sterling had been a thorn in his side for 3 years, blocking his acquisitions, outmaneuvering his plays, and worst of all, doing it with a smile that suggested she enjoyed the game. Today, 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, the game would end. The signs had been there from the moment they boarded. A man in a black suit who stood up too often, ostensibly stretching but actually checking positions. Another who kept touching his jacket, a nervous tell that suggested something hidden beneath. The flight attendant who seemed to avoid certain rows, her smile too bright, her laugh too forced. Michael noticed them all, his mind automatically calculating angles, distances, probabilities. Olivia noticed them too, though her recognition came from a different place. 3 days ago, her head of security had warned her about increased chatter. veiled threats that seemed to originate from Cross's organization. She had dismissed them, as she dismissed most threats, with the confidence of someone who had never truly been vulnerable. But here, trapped in a metal tube 5 miles above the earth, vulnerability took on a new meaning. "Would you like another drink, ma'am?" The flight attendant's voice was professionally cheerful, but her hands shook as she reached for Olivia's glass. "No, thank you," Olivia replied, her voice steady despite the growing knot in her stomach. The attendant moved on quickly, too quickly, and Olivia saw her exchange a glance with one of the men in black. The net was closing, and she could feel it tightening with each passing second. Lily had started a conversation about princesses, her childish voice a surreal counterpoint to the mounting tension. "Do you have a castle?" she asked Olivia with complete seriousness. "You look like you should have a castle." Despite everything, Olivia found herself almost smiling. "Just an office building, I'm afraid." "That's boring," Lily declared with 7-year-old honesty. "Daddy says offices are where dreams go to die." Michael's jaw tightened slightly. "Lily, that's not exactly what I said." "Yes, it is. You said it when Mrs. Patterson asked if you wanted to work at her company." The moment of levity shattered as one of the men in black stood up again, this time moving toward the bathroom at the front of the cabin. He walked with purpose, his hand inside his jacket, and as he passed their row, his eyes locked with Olivia's. The message was clear. Soon. That's when Olivia made her decision. Pride, reputation, maintaining the facade of control. None of it mattered if she didn't survive the next hour. She turned to Michael, leaning in close enough that her breath ghosted across his ear, her voice barely a whisper, a confession meant for him alone. "They're here for me." Michael's reaction was subtle but immediate. His entire body shifted. Not dramatically, but with the fluid economy of someone trained to respond to threats. His hand moved to Lily's seatbelt, checking its tightness while his eyes tracked the positions of every suspicious passenger. In that moment, Olivia saw something transform in his face. A hardness emerging from beneath the tired father facade, like steel beneath rust. "How many?" His voice was different now, lower, more controlled. "I don't know. 3, maybe 4. Cross. The fact that he knew the name without explanation sent a chill down Olivia's spine. "How did you, Daddy?" Lily's voice cut through their exchange, high and worried. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart. Just adult talk. Why don't you put on your headphones and watch your movie?" But it was too late for pretense. The countdown had begun, invisible but inexorable. 15 seconds that stretched like hours, each one marked by the thundering of Olivia's heart. She watched the digital clock on the entertainment screen tick forward, wondered if these might be her last moments, wondered why she had whispered to a stranger, wondered if she had just signed his death warrant along with her own. 14 seconds. The man in black returning from the bathroom, his jacket now unbuttoned. 13 seconds. Another man shifting in his seat, revealing the bulge of a weapon. 12 seconds. Damian Cross turning slightly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. 11 seconds. Michael's hand moving to unbuckle his seatbelt with deliberate calm. 10 seconds. A flight attendant disappearing into the galley, getting out of the line of fire. 9 seconds. Lily asking again what was happening, her voice smaller now, frightened. 8 seconds. Michael whispering something to his daughter that Olivia couldn't hear. 7 seconds. The cabin pressure seeming to change, though that might have been imagination. 6 seconds. A baby crying somewhere in economy, the sound carrying through the curtain. 5 seconds. Olivia's hand gripping the armrest so tight her knuckles went white. 4 seconds. The man in black, reaching into his jacket with practiced ease. 3 seconds. Michael's body coiling like a spring under compression. 2 seconds. The last moment of normal. The final breath before chaos. 1 second. A prayer on Olivia's lips, unspoken but fervent. 0. The two men rose as one, their movements synchronized with military precision. Guns emerged from hidden holsters, black metal catching the cabin lights. One pointed at Olivia, the other sweeping across the cabin to discourage heroes. The professional calm of business class shattered like crystal hitting concrete. Olivia Sterling, the first man announced, his voice cutting through the sudden screams. "You're coming with us." But Michael was already moving. In one fluid motion, he pushed Lily down below the seat level, his hand gentle but firm on her small back. "Stay down, baby. Close your eyes and count to 100. Daddy, I'm scared." "I know. Count for me. Can you do that?" The gunman nearest to them started to react to Michael's movement, but he was already too late. Michael Harris had shed his disguise like a snake shedding skin, and what emerged was something Olivia had never seen outside of movies. He moved with lethal grace, his body flowing from seated to standing to striking in one continuous motion. His hand shot out, catching the gunman's wrist and redirecting the weapon's barrel upward. The gun discharged, the sound explosive in the confined space, and a hole appeared in the overhead compartment. Oxygen masks dropped like yellow jellyfish, adding to the chaos. Michael's other hand drove into the man's throat, a precise strike that dropped him gasping. The second gunman swung his weapon toward Michael, but the aisle was narrow, the angle awkward. Michael used the first man's body as a shield, driving forward with controlled violence. He stripped the gun from nerveless fingers, reversed it, and had it trained on the second attacker before most passengers had even processed what was happening. "Drop it," Michael commanded, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had given such orders before and seen them obeyed. Now, but the second gunman was a professional too. He grabbed the nearest passenger, a middle-aged woman in pearls, and pulled her against him as a human shield. "Back off, or she dies." Olivia watched in stunned disbelief as Michael didn't hesitate. His shot was precise, surgical, catching the gunman in the shoulder of his gun arm. The weapon clattered to the floor, and the hostage scrambled away, sobbing. Michael kicked the gun under the seats and advanced, every movement controlled and purposeful. "Who else?" He directed the question at the wounded gunman without taking his eyes off the rest of the cabin. "How many more?" The man spat blood but said nothing. Michael's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made the gunman reconsider his silence. "4 total," he gasped. "Plus Cross." "Daddy?" Lily's voice was muffled, her face still pressed against the seat. "I'm at 37. Should I keep counting?" "Keep going, sweetheart. You're doing great." The dichotomy was surreal, Olivia thought. This man who had just neutralized 2 armed attackers with brutal efficiency, now speaking to his daughter with infinite gentleness. She had seen many faces of power in her career, but this was something different, something that transcended boardroom dominance or political maneuvering. "Mr. Harris," she began. But he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Not now. We need to move. They'll have backup position near the cockpit, and probably one near the rear galley. Cross won't dirty his own hands, but he'll have an extraction plan." "How do you know all this? Who are you?" Michael's smile was grim. Someone who should have stayed retired. He pulled Lily up from her hiding spot, cradling her against his chest, so her face was buried in his shoulder, shielded from the unconscious bodies and frightened passengers. With his free hand, he kept the confiscated weapon ready, his eyes constantly scanning. "We're going to play a game," he told Lily. "Keep your eyes closed and hold on tight." "Can you do that? Is it like hide and seek?" "Exactly like hide and seek." He turned to Olivia. "Stay close. Do exactly what I say, when I say it. No questions. No hesitation. Understood?" Olivia Sterling, who hadn't taken orders from anyone in 5 years, found herself nodding. There was something about Michael's absolute confidence, his preternatural calm in the face of chaos, that made obedience seem not just logical but essential. They moved through the cabin like a strange procession, Michael leading with Lily in his arms, Olivia following. Passengers pressed themselves into seats, some crying, others filming with shaking phones despite the danger. The aisle seemed impossibly long, each row a potential ambush point. Near the dividing curtain to economy, another attacker emerged. This one was smarter, staying low, using the seats for cover. Michael shifted Lily to one arm, an impressive feat of strength, and fired twice. Both shots hit center mass, and the attacker crumpled. 63, Lily whispered against his neck. "Daddy, I'm at 63. Good girl. Keep going." Olivia's mind struggled to process what she was witnessing. The transformation was complete and undeniable. The tired single father was gone. replaced by something that moved with predatory efficiency through the cabin. Yet the arm holding Lily remained gentle, protective, a contradiction that made her question everything she thought she knew about reading people. They reached the middle galley, a small space between business and economy. Michael set Lily down carefully, positioning her in the corner where she would be shielded from multiple angles. He checked his appropriated weapon, counting rounds with the unconscious competence of long practice. "We're pinned," he said quietly. "They'll have someone watching this position from economy, probably another near the forward galley. Cross is letting his men do the work while he waits to claim victory. So what do we do?" Michael looked at her, and for the first time since the violence began, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. "In the old days, I'd have a team, equipment, options. Now," he glanced at Lily, still counting in her small voice. "Now in the 70s. Now I have responsibilities." "The old days," Olivia repeated. "Your military? Special forces? Something like that." His expression closed off, but she pressed forward. "That man called you something. He recognized you." Michael's jaw tightened. "A ghost. That's all I am. Someone who should have stayed dead." Before Olivia could probe further, Damian Cross's voice rang out, amplified somehow, carrying clearly through the chaos. "Well, well. The infamous Shadow Wolf emerges from hibernation." Cross stepped into view at the far end of the business cabin, his hands empty but his posture radiating confidence. "I must admit, I didn't expect to find you here, playing babysitter to corporate royalty." Olivia felt Michael tense beside her. "Shadow Wolf?" she whispered. "Michael Harris died 7 years ago," Cross continued, his voice conversational as if they were discussing the weather. "But Shadow Wolf, the government's pet assassin, their problem solver, their ghost in the machine, he just disappeared. Poof, vanished after that unfortunate incident in Prague." Michael stepped out from the galley, keeping his weapon trained on Cross. "That's close enough, Damian." "Oh, we're on a first-name basis? How delightful. Tell me, does Miss Sterling know what you're capable of? Does she know about Belgrade? About Cairo? About the 17 confirmed kills attributed to Shadow Wolf? Daddy?" Lily had stopped counting, her voice confused and frightened. "Who's that man? Why is he saying those things?" The pain that flashed across Michael's face was raw, visceral. Olivia saw it then. The weight he carried. The reason for his transformation from warrior to single father. Whatever had happened in Prague, it had broken something in him, driven him to seek redemption in the simplest, purest role he could find. "Your daddy is a hero," Olivia said suddenly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. She stepped out beside Michael, her chin raised despite her fear. "Whatever he was before, he's a hero now." Cross laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "A hero? Is that what we're calling it? Ask him about the families, Miss Sterling. Ask him about the collateral damage. Ask him why the government burned him. Why even they couldn't stomach what he'd become. Enough." Michael's voice was deadly quiet. "You want Olivia. This has nothing to do with my daughter." "Ah, but it does. You see, when I learned she would be on this flight, I saw an opportunity. Eliminate a business rival. Make it look like terrorism. Profit from the chaos. But finding you here? That's a bonus worth millions. There are people who would pay handsomely to know that Shadow Wolf lives, that he has a weakness." The threat to Lily was implicit but clear. Michael's hand tightened on the gun, and for a moment, Olivia thought he might shoot Cross right there. But Damian hadn't survived in his brutal world by being careless. He raised one hand, revealing a small device. "Dead man's switch," he said pleasantly. "My heart stops. This plane experiences sudden decompression. We all die. But I'm willing to make that trade. Are you?" The cabin fell silent except for the hum of engines and the soft crying of frightened passengers. It was a standoff, one that couldn't last but seemed to stretch into eternity. Olivia's mind raced, trying to find angles, solutions, but every path led to disaster. Then Lily did something unexpected. She stepped out from behind her father. her small face set with determination that was heartbreaking in someone so young. "You're a bad man," she said to Cross, her voice clear and strong. "My daddy helps people. He fixed Mrs. Chen's roof when she couldn't pay, and he taught Tommy's dad how to walk again after his accident. You're just mean and scared." "Lily, get back," Michael said urgently, but she stood her ground. "No, Daddy. He's lying about you. I know you're good because you read me stories and make pancakes with smiley faces and never forget to check for monsters under my bed." The purity of her defense, the absolute faith of a child in her father, seemed to momentarily stun everyone. Even Cross appeared taken aback, his carefully maintained smirk faltering. In that moment of distraction, Michael moved. He didn't go for Cross. Instead, he spun, firing precisely at something Olivia hadn't even noticed. A fourth gunman who had been creeping up from economy. The man fell, his weapon clattering away. The motion continued, Michael scooping up Lily and diving back into the galley as Cross's remaining men opened fire. Bullets sparked off metal surfaces, shattered glass panels, turned the elegant cabin into a war zone. Olivia found herself pulled down, Michael's body shielding both her and Lily, as death whistled overhead. "The switch," she gasped. "He'll kill everyone." "No," Michael said with grim certainty. "He's bluffing. Cross is many things, but he's not suicidal. The switch is probably real, but it won't do what he claims. Maybe release some gas, cause confusion, but not decompression." "How can you be sure?" "Because I know him. Studied him. He was a potential target once, before I walked away. Damian Cross values his life above everything else." The gunfire stopped, replaced by Cross's voice, now angry rather than amused. "You always were too clever, Wolf. But you're trapped. My men control both ends of the plane. You can't protect both of them forever." Michael checked his ammunition again. 3 rounds left, not nearly enough. He looked at Lily, then at Olivia, and she saw him make a decision that clearly tore at him. "I'm going out there," he said quietly. "When I do, you take Lily and run for the cockpit. Bang on the door. Tell them code 7700. They'll lock it down. Protect you. Until we land." "That's suicide," Olivia protested. "You can't." "I can, and I will." He touched his daughter's face gently. "Lily, you're going to go with Miss Sterling now. She'll keep you safe." "No." Lily clung to him. "Daddy." "No. You promised you'd never leave me." "I'm not leaving, baby. I'm just going to go talk to the bad man. Remember what I taught you about being brave? Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Lily recited through tears. "It means doing the right thing, even when you are scared. That's my girl." He kissed her forehead, then looked at Olivia. "Please." Olivia nodded, though everything in her rebelled against the plan. She had built an empire on never retreating, never accepting defeat. But she recognized the sacrifice Michael was making. She pulled Lily into her arms, feeling the child's trembling body. Michael stood, checked his weapon one last time, and stepped out into the aisle. "Cross, you want Shadow Wolf?" "Here I am." He walked forward with measured steps. Weapon lowered, but ready. Cross's men tracked him with their guns, fingers on triggers. The passengers, who were still conscious, watched in terrified fascination. "The great Shadow Wolf," Cross said, his composure returning. "Reduced to this. A single father on a commercial flight, protecting a woman who would have stepped over you on the street." "Maybe," Michael agreed. "But that's the difference between us, Damian. I found something worth protecting. You've only found things worth destroying." They were close now, maybe 10 feet apart. Olivia could see both men clearly from her position, could see the calculation in Cross's eyes, the coiled readiness in Michael's stance. "Drop the weapon," Cross ordered. Michael complied, setting it carefully on an empty seat. He raised his hands, appearing to surrender. But Olivia noticed something Cross didn't. A slight shift in weight, a subtle positioning of feet. "You know what happens now," Cross said, raising his own weapon. "You die. I take Sterling, and your daughter grows up an orphan. Unless, You work for me. Shadow Wolf returns, but in my employ. Think of the possibilities. Michael appeared to consider it, his head tilting slightly. And Lily? Leverage, of course. To ensure your cooperation. That was Cross's mistake. The moment he threatened Lily directly, not as a hypothetical but as a real plan, something fundamental shifted. Olivia saw it happen, saw the last restraint snap in Michael's eyes. He moved faster than thought, faster than Cross could react. His hand shot out, not for the gun but for Cross's wrist, twisting with brutal precision. The weapon discharged into the ceiling as bones snapped. Cross screamed. But Michael was already behind him, arm around his throat in a chokehold that spoke of long practice. Stand down, Michael roared at the remaining gunman. Stand down or I snap his neck. The men hesitated, unsure. In that moment of uncertainty, something unexpected happened. The passengers, who had been cowering in terror, began to stand. First one, then another, then dozens. They were bankers and lawyers, accountants and consultants. Soft people who lived soft lives, but they had witnessed something that transcended their normal existence. They had seen a father willing to die for his child, a hero emerging from an ordinary man, and it stirred something primal in them. You heard him, one passenger said. A elderly man, in an expensive suit. Put the guns down. Now, added a woman, her voice shaking but determined. The gunmen were outnumbered 30-1, surrounded by angry, frightened people who had found courage in Michael's example. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Michael maintained his hold on Cross until zip ties appeared, produced by a passenger who turned out to be an off-duty air marshal. The remaining conspirators were similarly restrained, the immediate threat neutralized. But the cabin remained tense, uncertain. The cockpit door opened slightly, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an emergency landing in Greenland. Authorities have been notified. Please, remain calm. Michael released Cross, who slumped forward, cradling his broken wrist. But his eyes remained defiant, focused on Michael with undisguised hatred. This isn't over, Cross hissed. They know you're alive now. They'll come for you. Maybe, Michael said quietly. But not today. He turned and walked back to where Olivia stood with Lily. His daughter launched herself at him, and he caught her, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the universe. Which to him, she clearly was. 97, Lily said against his shoulder. I got to 97, Daddy. Perfect count, sweetheart. Perfect. Olivia watched them, father and daughter reunited, and felt something shift inside her chest. She had seen hostile takeovers, corporate warfare, backstabbing and betrayal, but she had never seen anything as pure as the love between these two. Shadow Wolf, she said quietly, testing the name. Michael looked at her over Lily's head. That was another life. Another person. But it's still part of you. Yes, he admitted. It always will be. The plane descended through cloud cover, and emergency vehicles were already visible on the Greenland runway, their lights flashing red and blue. In 40 minutes, they would be on the ground. In an hour, Michael would be answering questions from authorities. In a day, the story would be global news. What will you do? Olivia asked. Now that your secret is out? Michael was quiet for a long moment, stroking Lily's hair as she dozed against his shoulder, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. I'll do what I've always done. Protect her. Keep her safe. Try to be the father she deserves. And Shadow Wolf stays buried. If I have any say in it. Olivia made a decision then, one that would have seemed impossible an hour ago. She pulled out her phone, still miraculously functioning, and began typing rapidly. What are you doing? Calling my lawyers. All 17 of them. By the time we land, you'll have legal representation that will make the government think twice about dragging you back into whatever world you left. Consider it a thank you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you my life, Olivia corrected. But more than that, I owe Lily her father. No child should lose that. Michael studied her, and for the first time since the violence began, she saw warmth in his eyes. Thank you. The plane continued its descent, and passengers began to talk quietly among themselves, processing what they had witnessed. Several approached Michael to shake his hand, or simply nod their respect. He accepted their gratitude uncomfortably, clearly preferring anonymity to acclaim. As they broke through the clouds and the Greenland landscape spread below them, stark, white, and beautiful, Lily stirred and asked a question that, in its innocence, summarized everything. "Daddy, are we safe now?" Michael looked at his daughter, then at Olivia, then out at the approaching runway where government vehicles were undoubtedly waiting. "Yes, baby. We're safe." But Olivia heard the unspoken addition. For now, the plane touched down with barely a bump, the pilot's skill evident in the smooth landing despite the circumstances. As they taxied toward the terminal, Olivia made another decision. "I have a proposition," she said to Michael. He raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Sterling Group needs a new head of security. Someone with real experience, not just corporate bodyguard training. Someone who understands threats, both conventional and otherwise. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not offering just a job. I'm offering a future. For both of you. Legal protection. Financial security. The best schools for Lily. A chance to use your skills without becoming Shadow Wolf again." Michael was quiet, considering. "And what do you get out of it? Apart from the best security expert money can't normally buy? Maybe a chance to know the man who saved my life. The real man. Not Shadow Wolf. Not the legend. Just Michael Harris. Single father and apparent maker of pancakes with smiley faces." Despite everything, Michael almost smiled. "You'd trust Shadow Wolf to protect you?" "No," Olivia said firmly. "But I'd trust Lily's father with my life." The plane came to a stop, and immediately they could hear vehicles surrounding it. Doors slamming. Authoritative voices shouting commands. The real world was reasserting itself, bringing questions, investigations, and consequences. "Think about it," Olivia said as tactical teams prepared to board. "The offer stands." Michael nodded, adjusting Lily in his arms as she woke fully, blinking at the commotion outside the windows. "Daddy, are those police?" "Yes, sweetheart. They're here to help." "Are you in trouble?" Michael looked at Olivia, who was already on her phone with her legal team, her CEO persona snapping back into place as she prepared to protect them both with corporate might instead of violence. "No, baby. I think everything's going to be okay." The door opened, and cold Greenland air flooded the cabin. As tactical officers boarded, as Cross and his men were led away in restraints, as passengers gave their statements and medical teams checked for injuries, Michael Harris stood with his daughter in his arms and a powerful woman at his side. Shadow Wolf might have been exposed, but Michael Harris had found something more valuable than anonymity. He had found allies, possibility, and perhaps even a future where he didn't have to choose between being a warrior and being a father. The last thing Olivia heard before the authorities separated them for questioning was Lily's voice, bright and clear despite everything they had endured. "Daddy, can Miss Sterling come to our house for pancakes? I want to show her how you make the smiley faces." And in that moment, amid the chaos of emergency response and the weight of what had transpired, both adults laughed. It was the sound of survival, of unexpected connection, of a story that was ending and beginning all at once. Later, much later, when the investigations were complete and the headlines had faded, when Damian Cross was facing life in prison and the other conspirators had been rounded up, 3 people would sit at a small kitchen table. A little girl would giggle at pancakes with chocolate chip smiles. A former CEO would wear jeans for the first time in years. And a man who had been many things would finally just be himself. But that's a story for another day. For now, as emergency crews swarmed the plane and the world watched the dramatic footage of a thwarted hijacking, 3 lives had intersected at 35,000 feet and would never be the same. Michael Harris, the Shadow Wolf, had saved them all. But perhaps, in saving them, he had finally saved himself. The Greenland snow continued to fall, covering the plane in a blanket of white, as if nature itself was offering a clean slate, a new beginning, a chance to write a different ending to a story that had started with a whisper and ended with a promise of pancakes and possibility.